Welcome to the Brain Health Hookup. I'm Laurel Myers Hurst, your resident groovologist, and I believe that better mental health needs to be fun. Here we talk about mental wellness, we explore the physical, emotional, and relational needs we have as humans with the science and practices that help our mental health to flourish. Plus, we dive into my signature method, groove therapy, that engages folks in groove-based music making to lift mood and lower inflammation and pain. I'm so glad you're here. So let's hit it.
Well.
Well, truly a deep subject.
We're halfway through the current cohort of the Well-Tuned Woman's Somatic Desensitization and Reprocessing sessions, 10 sessions to address the roots of past painful experiences and how they affect us to this day. You've heard me talk about trauma multiple times on this podcast. Trauma is the wound that is left by a past painful experience. That wound may have been inflicted in one moment, in one day, in a brief period of time, or it can be chronic with injuries and insults to a person, body, mind, and soul, day after day, sometimes for years. When we have past painful experiences that cause us emotional or physical pain in the now, I'm a total believer that we need to find the remedy for those wounds in the body. In my opinion, no amount of thinking or rethinking will get you out of depressive or anxious symptoms that are generated from a totally frazzled nervous system. One of the most influential voices in the realm of trauma healing through the body is Francine Shapiro. Francine Shapiro got the whole process of desensitization and reprocessing started by noting something about her own body when she was feeling upset. She noticed that when she was feeling all kinds of internal consternation, when she darted her eyes back and forth as she was walking outside, she felt a sense of calm. She invited other practitioners into this insight. They started practicing it, and eventually, over years and decades, they began practicing this with patients as well. Something amazing happens when we engage both sides of the brain in a novel activity. In Francine Shapiro's case, she was motivating both sides of her brain to respond by darting her eyes back and forth. We know decades later that a variety of things that engage both sides of the brain have this same effect, kind of pouring miracle grow on the brain. That's because, as you may know, this side of my body is controlled by this side of my brain, and this side of my body is controlled with this side of my brain. So when I do something that involves a novel activity on both sides of the body, I'm enacting or I'm engaging both sides of the brain as well. Francine Shapiro ultimately codified a procedure called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's a lot of talk, but basically means that side to side eye movements help you to desensitize and reprocess. Let's break down those two words. Desensitization means the stimuli is the same, but my feeling of response, my gut level reaction to it has gotten less. This comes from classical operant conditioning, where you teach a sentient being to not react as strongly to a stimuli as it did when it first met the stimuli. So you can apply this to something like dog training, where if you have a reactive dog on a leash rather than always walking straight up to another dog and having your dog completely go berserk on the end of the leash, you might bring your dog close and treat the dog so the dog pays attention to you and doesn't react. Or maybe you walk across the street or down the block. Maybe you're only seeing another dog from a block away, but you maintain the attention of your dog through some type of means. So the dog can tolerate, your dog can tolerate that the other dog is there in the world. Through keeping your dog's attention through treats or play, you eventually bring the two dogs, the two stimuli closer and closer together until your dog, who used to be reactive, doesn't really react anymore. It's not upsetting to him. This is this process of desensitization. For desensitization to occur, the person or the animal that's being desensitized needs to have their attention maintained. So their attention isn't drawn away to something else that's unwanted. Think about this for yourself. I'm sure you've heard the word trigger in common parlance. Some people say activation. If a certain situation, memory, visual image, smell, sound is triggering or activating, it's forcing your attention from the present moment to that past moment, usually a past painful experience. As desensitization occurs, that thing you see, smell, taste, touch that reminds of the past, or situations or people who remind of the painful past, don't take our attention from the present. We're still able, after desensitization, to stay in the present moment and not to be overwhelmed by the reference to the past painful experience. So that's desensitization. Reprocessing is filing away that event or events related to the painful experience in our long-term storage banks. Traumatic memories are linked very strongly to the amygdala and not stored in the long-term memory banks, your really ancient file cabinet called the hippocampus. So reprocessing lays out the past painful experiences in a way that allows them to be put back into the hippocampus. Think about it as cleaning a closet. Reprocessing your brain and the past painful experiences you've had is like cleaning out a closet. When your past painful experiences are not processed, the clothes are hanging off the shelves, not even completely on the hangers. They're sort of cascading out of the door, and you can't close the closet door. There's no putting it away. You have to pay attention to it because it's not feasible to ignore it. It's right there present in your face all the time. When your closet is emptied and laid out, and do you decide what and where and how things are going to be put back, and then you go through the process of putting them back? That's reprocessed. You can shut the door, and yes, the past painful experiences are still there, but they're hung up on the hangers properly. They're in the drawers, they're on the shelves. They're not present in your attention all the time because they have a place, and you can close the door at will and open the door at will. So in this case, eye movement is the stimulus that makes the miracle grow sprinkled on your brain so that other work can be done. That other work is desensitization and reprocessing. For some people, wounds are so great or their sensitivity is so strong that eye movement can be a little much. In my practice with my well-tuned women and other people who are seeking desensitization and reprocessing, we use the body in other ways. So eye movement for some people can be dizzying, can make them nauseous if they have migraine headaches or something like that. Eye movement in some cases can be more stimulating. So alternative methods using the body as the bilateral activation are helpful. Before any of that happens, we really need a library or a menu of resources. It's in my husband's family, when things get really, really down, they go out as a family for ice cream. Some people watch Netflix. Some people have their favorite tasty food that they eat for comfort. We can build a library or menu of other resources beside food that we can enact even on our own. So, as an individual, it's not going to depend on a collective. It's going to be something that's accessible to us at all times. So, building a library or menu of resources to calm, to soothe ourselves as we are pulling everything out of the closet, as we are meeting that scary dog down the street. Of course, I'm using these metaphors for our past painful experiences, the messy closet, the bothersome dog. We need a way to calm ourselves. There are 4 main ways that I teach people in my practice to calm themselves, and if you would permit me, I'll go over those briefly today. I think about these things as bridges over things we really couldn't usually cross over. I mentioned this to a patient today, and I specifically referenced the song by Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water. I said, it's like that song, if you know it, Bridge Over Troubled Water. And she had never, ever heard of it before. I know I'm getting old, and I still was a little aghast that this patient in her 20s had absolutely no idea what that song was. But these resources can serve as a bridge over vast expanses of emotional waters that you otherwise would not be able to cross. This whole model is about doing things with your mind and your body to find peace that you would have never been able to do, or very unlikely been able to do otherwise. So, the 4 resources that I ask people to develop before we start this eye movement or somatic desensitization or reprocessing process. The first is well-regulated people. Some people are just role models. They're predictable. When they're activated by emotion, their response seems right on target. Even if it's a big thing, the emotional response is big, but not inappropriately big. And they let the small stuff be the small stuff. Those well-regulated people are very few and far between. I've known a couple in my 56 years. And it's helpful to have those people in your data bank or on your menu of resources, because if they've done it, we know we can do it. So those well-regulated people, I ask patients to think of them first as resources. Not that we're actually going to seek them out in time of trouble, though we could, but we're going to think of them as models for how we would gauge our response and how we would respond. The second resource are admirable characters. Granted, most of us know very few well-regulated people, very few truly well-regulated people. So it's okay to expand our search for resources into books, movies, plays, myths. This has been a practice that human beings have done for millennia, telling the stories of epic characters and emphasizing both their downfalls and their victories so that we understand as human beings better how to make our way through the world. The third resource is comfortable places. You can make up your own. Fill it with all the things you love to see, hear, taste, touch, smell. This might sound a lot like grounding, and it is a lot like grounding, but it's a place that has all the grounded things you would most love that's easily accessible to you. Naming that place can help you find it in your memory banks again and again. The last area of resources are supportive memories. It's often good not to do too distant past memories. Too distant past memories can be tinged, even when they're happy, with negative feelings, some sorts of regret or grief, even. So, recent history, pleasant experiences, moments of joy, moments of success, these are great supportive memories to have on board before we enter a session of desensitization and reprocessing. So if we feel like our attention is being drawn to the past, like we're falling into the past or being enveloped in the past, we can draw on these people, characters, places, or supportive memories to keep a firm foot in the present. So we can do that desensitization and reprocessing work without losing ourselves in total overwhelm. If you'd like to hear more from my clients who are currently using these techniques, I'd love for you to drop an episode suggestion on my podcast page, podcast.welltunedwellness.com. So ultimately, the resources we've mentioned become a cast of supporting characters for the main event, some type of bilateral stimulation that pours Miracle Grow on the brain while we actively feel and digest and organize and lay to rest in our regular memory banks in the hippocampus the experiences that have hurt us. That's desensitization and reprocessing. Painful experiences that have not been desensitized or reprocessed lie closely with the amygdala and activate it, that fight flight part of our brain. So the experiences that have perpetually triggered us, the experiences that shift us into disassociation and conk us out of experiencing the here and now, we want to move those from the fight flight amygdala part of the brain to the long-term storage vault, the hippocampus, so we can enjoy the here and now. So the resources, again, well-regulated people, admirable characters, comfortable places, supportive memories. If you'd like to hear a follow-up episode on some of the types of bilateral stimulation used in desensitization and reprocessing of these past painful experiences, again, contact me through the show's episode suggestion link on my podcast page, podcast.welltunedwellness.com. We've only really talked about the preparation phase of EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or somatic desensitization and reprocessing. And we definitely could talk much more about the bilateral stimulation types and styles that have been used over the decades since Francine Shapiro started this process for us so long ago. I'm just going to close the loop on Simon and Garfunkel. Anybody out there who has heard of Like a Bridge Over Troubled Water, or even maybe danced to it, slow dance at one of your school dances? I'd love to hear about it. I think we need to keep that one alive. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Brain Health Hookup. I hope this episode radiates with the conviction that generating mental wellness needs to be fun and safe. We want you to find your power and understand your innate design to flourish in everything you do. And we hope that inspires you to come back and listen for more. I'd love for you to leave a review of this podcast, as it helps this show grow to reach more people who need to make mental wellness fun. You can find the leave a review button, as well as all the YouTube visuals, bonuses, and ways we can help to support you on our website, podcast.grooveforhealth.com. I appreciate you more than words can say. See you next time, and remember, together we have everything we need.